And welcome into episode number 6 of the Grind on Sports. I'm Wayne Kaiser alongside my teammate, Mr. Ben Metz, and back at it here post the big weekend. Basketballs, they're now 1-1 on this week, but we'll talk about how they necessarily got there. Want to kind of recap the last few weeks, but we'll get to that. But Mr. Metz, how you doing, man? Traveling man. I've been down to the Sunshine State.
Yeah, went down to Fort Lauderdale, Florida. My daughter had a volleyball tournament down there. She played very well. I'm very proud of her. I had the opportunity down there. I talked to you. I was kind of starstruck. Miguel Cabrera, the first baseman for the Detroit Tigers, future Hall of Famer, was down there. And my son was able to get an autograph from him and pick his brain a little bit. And, man, what an experience. And so I'm happy to be back home because the weather back here, it may not be as nice as South Florida, but I have a state between me and the Florida Gator fans. So I'm happy to be back home, buddy.
It's always a good thing. Like I said, you went to Fort Lauderdale. I've never been there, but any town I've been in Florida, it matches the trashy comparison that I think that would equate to being a Florida Gator fan. So again, not any of my friends that are from Florida. That's why you're up here now. That's all I can say. But excited to be back at it, grinding here, talking Tennessee basketball again. As you turn the calendar to January, it's a full push to March for basketball, and then really off and running for Tennessee baseball here just shortly. We'll get to both of those in this episode. But again, recap while we've been away. Georgia claims their second straight national championship. Again, third in program history. After they just dismantled TCU there in the college football playoff championship game. A lot can be said there. A lot has been said over the last couple of weeks, but ultimately Georgia's the gold standard here the last couple of years in college football, and until somebody changes that, they're king of the castle. I'm not ready to make them the next dynasty, the next Alabama, but I think Kirby Smart's got something good going there in Athens.
Yeah, and I heard a very interesting analogy about Stetson Bennett versus Aaron Murray. You know, which one is Mario and which one is Luigi? Those are your two quarterbacks at the University of Georgia. Which one is the super of the Super Mario Brothers? And people can criticize Aaron Murray all day long, but at the end of the day, Stetson Bennett is going to beat Bowser, buddy.
Well, I think Stetson Bennett, as old as he is, he might be Aaron Murray's dad. I don't know, but I think as long as Aaron Murray's going to be there, I think he's got to work out the rest of his college career at Cane's. I think that's the chicken place there in Georgia that he's he's sponsored by. I think the day after the national championship game, he was on commercials. So a lot to be done there, but again, I think I'd be remiss. And again, things are bigger than sports sometimes. Georgia. After their national championship celebration, a car accident claimed 2 of the Georgia family, one lady staffer for the University of Georgia, and one offensive lineman for the University of Georgia. 2 others were injured. Looks like they're going to recover, but will have some sustained injuries. But thoughts and prayers go out to the Georgia football family, because at any rate, what happens yard line to yard line, we're all big orange. But when it comes to life's being cut short just based on just circumstance, that's a tough pill to swallow, no matter what colors you wear on Saturday. So thoughts and prayers go out to Georgia.
Yeah, terrible situation. Prayers out to the families.
And again, as we turn our thoughts to the next season, like I kind of spoke about, a lot of people are questioning, is Georgia the new kings of college football? I think for 2022, absolutely. I mean, I think you win the national championship, that's where it's at. But I think they say, are they the next Alabama? Well, I'm not sure I don't know that that's a bar that people need to shoot for. I think just being the best version of yourself each and every year should be the game. And then after 15 years, if you're averaging more than 10, 11 wins a year, then yeah, compare them to Nick Saban's Alabama. But right now, I think Kirby Smart is by far one of the top 2 or 3 coaches in college football, and he's got to be proud of that. But like I said, I'm all orange on this side, so I'm waiting for the hype train to kind of roll up on some of that and maybe crash some parties here and there.
Yeah, and there's a lot of turnover at quarterback in the SEC. I think we talked about that a little bit in the last podcast, but Georgia historically has not been well renowned for their development of quarterbacks. And in the SEC, you look at Spencer Rattler coming back for South Carolina. You look at the situation that Tennessee has with Joe Milton and the young quarterback Nico. But with Joe Milton coming back, an experienced quarterback, that kind of gives Tennessee a little bit of an upper hand in the East if we can get all the pieces together.
Yeah, I think Bryce Young graduating, Stetson Bennett graduating, Spencer Rattler and Joe Milton are probably some like leaders in the clubhouse, if you will, of best returners in the East at the very least. And so we'll just see kind of how that pans out. But kind of flip script. Like I said, the calendar now reads January. So let's talk a little Tennessee basketball. Again, a super hot start to SEC play, 4-0 to start conference play, kind of tail end of December, but then started a couple there in January. Cats came to town this past Saturday, Knoxville matchup. Huge day for Rocky Top, a noon tip-off. Chris Lofton's jersey to be retired. If you don't know Chris Lofton, you should. Google him to get the details. But basically, the SEC leader in made three-pointers in history of the Southeastern Conference, by far the best shooter in Tennessee basketball history, hailed from the state of Kentucky, raised a bluegrass guy, but all Big Orange now. His jersey number 5, was raised to the rafters this past Saturday at halftime. And unfortunately, all those things were lined up, a sold-out TBA, but Tennessee drops the first match, their first SEC game of the year to John Calipari's Kentucky Cats.
Yeah, that game against the Kittens, man, I'm telling you, like, I was excited because Lofto's getting his number retired. This is a guy that was plucked out of the Rupp orphanage. You know, he's coming down here to Tennessee. He's leaving the Bluegrass State, and you mentioned it. He leads in every category for three-pointers at the University of Tennessee. He's in the top 5 in a lot of scoring categories as well. But I think all time, behind Allen Houston and Ernie Grunfield, he's probably number 3. You could argue, Bernard King's up there. You could argue Dale Ellis. You could get C.J. Watson into it. Tony White. These are all guys you could put in there. But what Lofton did in his career is pretty exceptional. We go into the game, and, when you got into the game, not getting into too much detail right now on that, but we just couldn't hit the three-pointer. They were 25 for 22 from free throws. You had guys that were getting lots of minutes, like Vescovi couldn't hit a shot. Phillips had 2 points. Key had 7 points. Zig had 6 points in 27 minutes. So we got cold in Thompson Bowling Arena. And we were out-rebounded, 43 rebounds to their 23. But let's look at the positive. Bo Rat himself, Euros, had those 19 points for us, Wayne. So we got to take that positive because we're going to need that down low. We're going to need that down low effort because there's going to be games where we can't hit that 3.
Well, and that's been our MO for the last 2 or 3 years is live and die by the 3. But we've lived more than we've died. It's just unfortunately at the moments we don't want to is when we seem to go cold. But back to Chris Lofton, another thing that I thought was huge for Tennessee basketball and historically, just to have some people in the house to raise that banner. Candace Parker was in the house. Allen Houston was in the house. You saw a lot of family. I think he had more than 150 people there on his record or on his dime, if you will, to see this. Just a great guy. I've met him a couple times. He is not look at me. He's very much I'm just doing what I'm supposed to do. Go to work, do your job. Don't make it about you. This is a guy that while he was at the University of Tennessee, diagnosed with testicular cancer, didn't tell anybody. I think he told Bruce Pearl, and that was about it. He went to treatment, went and got his shots up, went to class, did everything really in the shadows, if you will, and all in like I said, a historic campaign there in his 4 years in Knoxville. And it's good to see that he's finally been rewarded. Jersey retired. Maybe not the tallest kid that's ever played for Tennessee basketball, maybe not the most NBA prospect or build that's ever played in Knoxville, but I would argue maybe one of the bigger hearts that's played in Knoxville, and effort, and in the face of a lot of change. A lot of people don't remember this, but Bruce Pearl didn't bring Chris Lofton to Knoxville. Buzz Peterson brought him to Knoxville, and ultimately he benefited from the first few years there with Bruce. He and Dane Bradshaw. Dane Bradshaw became a glue man, came sixth man of the year in the Southeastern Conference under Bruce Pearl. So I think just in a lot of grassroots time for Tennessee basketball, it looks like, after Rick Barnes has been there, the time that he's been there, some of the successes that, the Elite Eight that Conzo took us to, I think there's a lot of success over the last maybe 15, 20 years of Tennessee basketball. But ultimately, it all started with a little kid from Kentucky really rocking it out in Knoxville.
And let's not forget that, we talk a lot as fans about the game of basketball and the desire to have a pure shooter on your team. This was the last pure shooter at the University of Tennessee. That's my opinion. He was the last pure shooter.
Honestly, I think the only one that's close is probably Vescovy right now.
Yeah. And if you go into the record book and you look at it, this is a guy who in 3 different seasons shot better 3-point percentage, more 3-pointers in a regular season than Vescovy ever even came close to. Not to mention, this is a guy who has hit nine 3-pointers in one ball game in 2006. Okay, it's 2022. 9 3-pointers in a game. If you go out in the driveway right now and you say, I'm gonna hit 9 3-pointers, you'll be out there all night. Now me, I might be out there till about 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, but you'll be out there all night.
I'll be out there all night. I've got a basketball hoop on the back of my door right here, and I bet you I can't hit 9 from across the room, let alone a 3-point shot. But Ben, yeah, I think if you look at it, if my memory serves me correct, when he graduated, he was only behind J.J. Redick nationally for 3-pointers made in his career. So, yeah, an amazing kid. Like I said, Vol Nation showed out the history, the royalty of Tennessee basketball. Lady Vol basketball was in the house. Anytime you have Candace Parker, I mean, that's the last great thing, right? When you talk about the finale of Pat Summitt's greatness, her great run to those 8 national championships, 2 of those had Candace Parker at the controls. So, I love seeing her, and she's turned into she's a great pro. She'll probably go down as top 5 in WNBA history all time, and that's some pretty high regard as well. But again, Chris Lofton in the house. Not sure if that had impact on the basketball game from a psychological standpoint, but just quite frankly, cold from the 3-point line, very undisciplined on the rebounding side of things. Some fouls that really got us out of rhythm early, had to make us use different lineups that we weren't really used to. And ultimately, the Cats beat and banged around long enough that Tennessee gave them an advantage, and they just kind of held to it. He knocked down their free throws. We talked about that. But ultimately, Calipari, even though I don't like him, I think he's as slimy as his hair is. But I think ultimately, when his back's against the wall, he knows how to get these kids to play hard for him, and they did that in Knoxville Saturday night. They get out of there with a win. But I don't think this rivalry's over for the year. I think when we go to Rupp, we'll remember, the physicality. We'll remember the what could have beens, and we'll get back on track. The stat that I kind of coined. I know the rebounds are a big stat. I know the free throws are huge. But my biggest stat is Uros Plavsic had 19 points, and he didn't have his first rebound until about 8 to 10 minutes to go in the basketball game. So to me, that what we were having to give up on the rebounding just to be able to compete with Oscar Shibwe and those rim attackers for the Cats, I think it just really took us out of our game. We weren't hot from the 3-point line. And when you live and you really rely on that, you just don't have cutters that can do what you need to do. I thought, like you said, Vescovy hit the deck early in that basketball game, kind of twinked his shoulder. I think that impacted his ability later in the week. Obviously didn't go play in Starkville. I thought Ziggy, he was hearing footsteps, probably for the first time I've ever seen him do that. He had some transition baskets that normally are automatic, and he rushed shots, bounced them off the rim. I think we missed 6 or 7 layups. So just not characteristic of Tennessee basketball. And like I told everybody Saturday night, Sunday, because it just seems like they never call me when we win and get my opinion, but they want to know what I'm thinking when we lose. And I told everybody, I said, well, we can let this be the new us, or we can put it in the book and just build out of it. And if the way we went to Starkville means anything, I think we build out of it.
So the silver lining for me, too, was what you said with Euros having that pointage. But not only him having that pointage, but Kemwa having some high points in previous weeks. Because what we saw in the Kentucky game, and we're starting to see this in other games very similar that we've lost throughout the season, the Arizona and the Colorado game, is we have to establish some point scoring down at the post area. Relying on 3-point shooting and having that pure shooter like Chris Lofton, a guy that, against that Texas game where he shot over Kevin Durant with 22 seconds left after Chisholm laid that screen. That was his 7th 3-pointer that he hit in the game on 15 attempts. So we don't have that pure shooter. We don't have that Jimmy Chitwood that Norman Dale had. We've got Ollie, and we've got what's the name of the other guy? Slick or Slack. So the guy who, I can't remember the name of the guy who he'd say a prayer, a strap. He'd say a prayer, and you wanted a 20-second timeout, and you end up having to take a 40-second timeout because he held up the timeout. But
I don't know. I think it's a microcosm of a lot of different things. I think when Tennessee and Kentucky, hit the floor, it's just it's a matter of who's got the stronger will, which set of eyes the referees seem to want to bring that night, all the different things. But ultimately, it just wasn't our day there in Knoxville against the Cats. But again, talk about silver linings, talk about positives to bring out of that. It would have been real easy for the wheels to completely fall off of this wagon and us to go to Starkville. All of a sudden, we've lost 2 in a row. National media and even maybe local question: is Tennessee even as good as we thought they were, or were they just a benefactor of a pretty just easy start to a conference slate? So go to Stark Vegas. Honestly, when I turned it on the other night, Vescovy in street clothes. You saw Key in street clothes. You saw Euros still had those little, I called them those hickeys on his arm where he had those cups going. And they go to Stark Vegas and, really get it done on an undermanned group. And you saw Ziggy really, I don't want to say atone for a bad performance, because I think he leaves his heart out there every time he plays, but plays wire to wire, plays 40 full minutes. And really at the end of that game, I think he had fuel left in the tank. He takes the balls on his shoulders. They battle early ticky-tack fouls and just outlast a really aggressive bunch from Mississippi State, but go on the road and get an 11-point victory in SEC play. That says it all right there.
Yeah, you said it about Ziggy and his performance. I mean, the first half, 23 points. The second half, Tennessee comes around, gets 47 points. They go from shooting 2 for 15 on three-pointer in the first half, 2 of 15. And then they shoot 9 more in the second half. They go 8 for 9. They shoot almost 90% from three-point land. a lot of that was Ziggy. He gets the 40 minutes, the 24 points. I don't know if that was a season high or career high for him, but he was shooting a lot of balls with hands. You can't even say hands in his face because of how short he is. It was like shoes in face, and he still somehow gets it off and hits a three-pointer. But
yeah, I think he only had 6 points in the first half. I had 18 in the second half.
Yeah, I mean, just a ridiculous performance. And, you think about that first half, because you and I were texting back and forth. I was pretty sick to my stomach. And I'm thinking, we're on the road and we're going to lose to this opponent. We got LSU next week. We got some pretty big opponents coming up. And we come back, we establish ourselves. Josiah Jordan James drew a couple charges I thought that were really pretty incredible. I mean, position his feet, draw that charge, turn over the basketball. We come back at halftime, tie up the ball game 23-all, come out of the locker room. We start playing a rotation. Did you notice, Wayne, the rotation? There was a rotation out there that was working, and then there was a rotation that wasn't working. Like there was one with Waka was in there. Meshack was in there with Waka. And you had Ziegler on the bench, and it was, it was just, there were certain rotations that were not clicking. I don't know if you saw that.
When you don't have Vescovy on the floor, that starting lineup's gonna struggle a little bit. So you're really just trying to find something. And I think when we ran the bigger lineup, I think Awaka, when you talk about athletic floor to ceiling, he may be one of our more athletic kids on the floor, but. He's kind of like, I don't know if you remember Brian Williams from back in the day. I always called him Big Puppy because it was always like his paws were too big for what we were needing him to do. He just always got fouls when he didn't need one. He couldn't rebound when he was right. He jumped too early. There was all kinds of things. So I think Awaka, he is a work in progress that you can be really excited about. Meshack, I like him defensively, but I think you give up a ton of offense. He's just not – you could pass it out to him at the three-point line and nobody will go out there with him. I think that's where he's at. And then I think, some of those other kids just struggled at times just with the moment. I think Kumwa didn't have his best day. I think he got some key rebounds late that helped us. But I thought he got in some foul trouble early in that game that I was nervous was going to take him out of that one. I think it's good to have some adversity. I'll always say that, especially in non-football sports. It seems like in football you don't have any room for error. You just got to be perfect if you want to prove that you can be there. In basketball, baseball, soccer, any of those sports, you don't have to win them all. And I think, when you lose to a Kentucky, you've got two options. I labeled it here Tennessee's get back. I think you had an opportunity to go on the road and go, well, we lost to Kentucky, so we just, honestly, it's just hard. And Vescovy and Key's not in the lineup, so we've got an excuse. Well, let's just lay on that excuse and just die. Well, I think Rick Barnes wasn't going to have that. He demands more out of those kids. When they made a mistake, he jerked somebody out, put somebody else in there, and honestly, it was night and day for guys like Phillips, for guys like Adu, and frankly, guys like Zakai Ziegler from Kentucky to Mississippi State. Not only did they play better basketball, but they played with more leadership, and I think Tennessee they can rely on Vescovy to be kind of the leader, but I think when he's out of the rotation, we can't give up points and rebounds just because there's one guy off the floor.
Yeah, and going to this topic right here, Wayne, I think the tale of two halves. This kind of tells us how the season's going to go. I think about that magic 8 ball that you shake up. And if you shake that magic 8 ball up and it says that you're going to shoot a low percentage of three-pointers, this team is not going to be successful. So the first half showed us that if we go out and we shoot 15 three-pointers and we go 2 for 15 and have a poor day behind the arc, we're going to struggle to win the ball game. Where in the second half, if we can establish the three-point game, and we did it with Kimwa, we did it with Josiah Jordan James. Ziegler had a couple from out there, and they had to respect the three-pointer. They couldn't pack the box. Calipari said earlier in the week in the Fandom show that one of his coaches came up to him and said, "Hey, pack the box, make them shoot the three. We'll die if they beat us at 3-point land. They beat us at 3-point land, but let's pack the box." And Calipari said, and I'm not going to quote him exactly, but he said he went with him, and his coach was right. We couldn't hit the 3-pointer, and we can't do anything down low in the box. So I think what we found out in this game down in Mississippi is this is our team. This is our team's identity. We have to shoot a high percentage from the arc in order to establish something down low for our big man.
And the good thing is unlike in other years where we only had one or two shooters, really, I mean, between Josiah Jordan-James, Vescovy, Ziegler, Key, we have a pretty good multitude. Phillips, I think it could become a three-point shooter. I think there's enough guys that you don't need them all to be hot. You just need one guy to probably pop a dozen, and you can put yourself in a great position to win games. But Ben, kind of to kind of close this up, and I think we're progressing toward maybe our most attained timeline of any episode to this point. But I watched that Kentucky game with my little boys, Jackson and Nealon, and again, I thought they did a great job. I think anytime I'm as frustrated as I am when we're not doing well, them to stick in there with me is a testament to how they're growing and now they're becoming Tennessee fans. But they made a comment when things weren't necessarily going our way, and it made me kind of think through a topic and kind of getting your perspective, because you've got two young ones too, and I think we're living in a time that makes this difficult. But why is it so hard to be a Tennessee fan? And when we were watching that game and Kentucky had kind of found themselves and they're kind of doing their thing, and it seems like every time we have a chance to cut it to one or whatever, we foul them or they hit a shot or something like that. And I can't remember if it was Jackson or Nealon, but he looks at me and he says, "It's just tough sometimes, isn't it?" And I'm like, "You have no idea." You have no idea. But then we over the course of the last couple of years, because they're 8-10, and so really the concept of fandom is not in their. They don't understand that yet. It doesn't bother them to lose a ball game. It doesn't impact them the way it does me. Likewise, we were going to cut a podcast last Saturday, and I called it off because I wasn't ready to talk about that game. I mean, it was I'll claim it. You know what I'm saying? But at the same rate, I think in the time and date we're living, it's hard to create or explain to young people allegiance and what it means to lock, stock, and barrel, blood, sweat, and tears, lock into a team. And I think I've done a pretty good job. I mean, Nealon doesn't have an option. He's named after the general. And Jackson, I told him, I said, you can go to school anywhere you want. I'll just only pay for one. So, I mean, we've laid the groundwork. The laws are down, but total joke there for anybody who takes that real serious. But I think it's what have you done for me lately? NIL, if I don't like it, hit the transfer portal world. I think it's something that people really have to look at is don't assume people understand what allegiance means anymore. Because really, we talked about it off air today and in other times. Okay, our team's sucking right now. Well, let's just, these three teams they've been good for the last couple of years. Let's just pick one of those. And really, for our young kids, that's not, to us, that's foreign. To us, that's some kind of blasphemy, right? That's not the world we live in. So to kind of answer the first part of this is why is it so hard to be a Tennessee fan? It's because, we're the path less traveled. Tennessee isn't necessarily a Georgia, a Florida, a Texas, a California, as far as talent rich areas of the country. So I think that is an impactful piece of why Tennessee, it takes more to be really, really good here at Tennessee. But I also think that means that's why it's sweeter when we are good. We looked at the late 80s all the way through the 90s, the dynasty that was, the Big Orange Expedition, all those things that the 90s were. We were the winningest team in the 90s. So there's an example there is a baseline that says Tennessee can be good, and we have been good at other things. And just frankly, in the last calendar year, Tennessee baseball's been ranked number 1 in the country. Tennessee football's been ranked number 1 in the country, and Tennessee basketball's been ranked number 1 in the country. So I don't think we're too far off, but I think being a Tennessee fan, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. You've got to understand that adversity will hit, and I don't know why, but a lot of times adversity takes I-40 and takes about exit 389.
Yeah. Well, we talked about it. I think that we live in a society where we live in a society of convenience. We live in a society of instant gratification, those two components. So when you and I were growing up, I think about, I had to apply at the University of Tennessee. I had to put together a written application and turn in a notebook like this and go stamp it and mail it to the University of Tennessee. Nowadays, these kids put together a PDF. They have it electronically sent. You have cellular devices that can access information quickly, instant gratification. If you're not satisfied with something, you can complain about it, and you're rewarded when you complain about things. So I think a lot of that has to do with the society that kids are growing up in. It's easy, if something doesn't go your way, to make a change and not hold allegiance. When we were growing up, if things went wrong, you couldn't do that. You couldn't say, well, I'm not playing baseball at high school. I'm not starting. I didn't get picked on my freshman team. I went through 6 cuts and didn't get picked. I was the last kid to get cut. And I knew I was a strong baseball player. I didn't have the option to go play baseball at another school. I had to work hard, ride it out, and it made me a better ball player. But I feel like today, in today's society, Wayne, it's just easier to say, you know what, I'm gonna go on Fanatics. I'm gonna pay $100, and guess what? I'm an instant Georgia Bulldog fan.
Yeah, insert team here, but I and it's weird. We're at that weird age, Ben, that like we're not. Well, it's according to who you ask. We're not old, but we're not young anymore. And I don't normally blame social media because I think it has its definite power points, right? That it can influence things for a good cause.
Yeah.
But I remember, I guess, growing up, when you were talking about Tennessee football, okay, I remember when we got smashed in the Orange Bowl, Peyton's last game as a Tennessee Volunteer. I don't remember turning on the TV and hearing Paul Feinbaum bash Peyton Manning. I don't remember going on social media and them questioning Philip Fulmer or David Cutcliffe's calls in that game. I don't remember that. I remember listening to John Ward call the game. I remember him and Bill Anderson, kind of talking through, what went right, what went wrong. They still had a player of the game. They talked about what the next season looks like, who's returning, who's not. Al Wilson's senior year, blah blah blah. And I watched the Philip Fulmer show the next day, and all was well. I mean, I just let Tennessee people tell me what Tennessee was. I didn't listen to national media. And, I don't want to say that ESPN or the big box stores, whatever you want to call them, are the problem. But I'm going to tell you, when your young people, the only broadcasters or the only people that they listen to are national people, and really, frankly, all they are getting paid to do is not report the news, not paint a pretty picture, but to get as many clicks as they can get. It's hard to live in any one way. I mean, I think about just coaching. Pat Summitt. It's been said by Holly Warlick. It's been said by Kelly Harper. It's been said by Dean Lockwood. Anybody that would listen that was a coach with Pat Summitt said she couldn't coach now. One, because the media is going to chew her up, but two, the athlete isn't going to be able to withstand the level of intensity that she brought to the court. So I think it's a different time and place. I think social media and media personalities in general. I remember back in just the '90s. I don't remember just there being a strong personality presence. There wasn't a not that I love these guys. One's a Tennessee alum, Marty and McGee. There wasn't that type show didn't exist. Stephen A. Smith probably still is loud, but did not have the platform that he does. Paul Feinbaum, I'm pretty sure, was a radio guy in Alabama. I didn't hear anything from him. Really, we were privy to John Adams of the News Sentinel. Not that I was always happy with his articles, but I was privy to old Schleicher or whatever. He was the guy that really did his thing at the Knoxville News Sentinel. Jimmy Himes, Bob Kessling, of course, John Ward, Bill Anderson, and that crew. And really, I turned it off. Like, I didn't need anything else because they told me what we did wrong, how we were going to fix it, and I waited till next Saturday and didn't have an outlet to look at it.
Yeah, and sometimes if you didn't pay the money to get Jefferson Pilot Sports on a Saturday, you may not know what happened at the ball game unless somebody attended and they come tell you.
Yeah, I remember, when we had – you remember when we used to – Tennessee games there was a pay-per-view game or two every year?
Yeah.
I remember you'd have to find a restaurant that would have it because Dad wasn't getting it. Dad, right. I think if he didn't have a few bucks on it, he wasn't buying it. So I don't know. I think the time we live in, it's important that people I don't care who you root for. If you're from Kentucky, you should like Kentucky. We'll let you like Tennessee if you want to, but you should like your home state. But I think it's important just people, and I'm not here soapboxing or whatever, but allegiance, it's like common sense isn't common anymore. Well, allegiance isn't common anymore. People jump ship more than they'd like. I know a guy right now that's never been in the state of Alabama, and he's an Alabama fan.
Woo.
He was born and raised in Blount County.
Golly, that's terrible.
Yeah. There's a lot wrong with that, but I ain't got enough time to talk about it.
But going briefly into like down here at this next point, Wayne, how do you, with that being said, how do we further the Big Orange Kingdom? Okay. And you talk to your boys about it. I've talked to Tyson and Elliot about it. That 52-49 win over Alabama, it wasn't just that evening. It goes all the way back through the losses, each loss, all the emotions that I experienced as a fan leading up to that ball game. Every game prior to us snapping that streak, I had the what if feeling. And then I'd go to bed at night disappointed. And that 52-49, that emotion was gone. It was behind me. And we were kings of college football that evening. And I won't forget that feeling. I won't forget sharing a cigar with my father-in-law, my brother-in-law, in pure celebration. I think it's important for us as fans with the younger generation is to explain allegiance and the importance of loyalty, because it's going to hurt and there's going to be years and years of losses. But when that win does happen, it's your night.
Well, and I think grind it out, stick it out. Those are terms I like to use. And it's what I say with anything. It's easy when things are cool. Like, I mean, I'm pretty sure I could be president of the United States if the economy was good, we weren't in any kind of war, and everybody liked us. I think I could pull that job off. But I'm not naive enough to think that that's how it rolls. It's like being a Tennessee fan. If we could just come out here and roll Florida, Georgia, and Alabama every year and just really mop the floor with everybody else, well, everybody be a Tennessee fan. And at one time in my life, I felt like the world was. In the late 90s, you didn't go very far without. I remember when Walmart used to sell Tennessee shoes, and my dad would literally we'd have to talk to a lady that worked at Walmart to find out when they were getting them because he wanted them that bad. And it's just, fandom is kind of a fly by night thing. I don't know that I don't blame that on any one thing. I just think it's society. There's so many more screens to look at. There's so many more shows to watch. There's so many more subscriptions. And and watch it when you want to type things. And I think honestly, HD TV's kind of taking some fandom away from people, because nobody cares to sit in a stadium anymore and pay $6 for a hot dog, and when you beat Alabama, that was the best hot dog you've ever eaten.
Yeah, and just to explain that feeling of pure victory, that pure victory feeling. I was flying back from Fort Lauderdale to Atlanta. Guy gets on the airplane. He's wearing a Georgia red shirt, Georgia red hat. He gets on the airplane. He says, "How about them dogs?" And he chants, "How about them dogs?" to somebody 2 rows back. And I turned to my father-in-law, who was sitting next to me, diehard Tennessee fan. I said, "I know that feeling. I've been there, and he's earned it. He's earned it." And that's what we have to teach this younger generation is when you get to that point, you've earned it. You wear it with pride, and you celebrate. And you celebrate as much as you possibly can, because right around that corner, it's going to be heartache, and you're going to have to fight through it again.
Yeah, it's it's kind of the old baseball adage, right? You're going to fail 70% of the time, and you may still go to the Hall of Fame. So as a fan, you just got to grind through the bad times just to hope and kind of be ready to celebrate those good times. So if you're out there and you're like, I won't get the last 15 minutes back, that's just time wasted. Well, I hate that. I'd watch it again when you're a little bit more attentive. I think it's something to be said. If you're not committed, then I appreciate you listening for the first 35 minutes. But I'm an advocate trying to get people back on track. That sometimes it's the path less traveled is worth it because of the sweetness of victory, right? When it finally does happen. But Ben, a lot has been said. We've talked a lot. Tennessee basketball got a lot more to talk. Hopefully through the month of March and maybe early April, if we can keep stringing together some of those victories. But at the end of the day, our time here on episode 6 has kind of come to a close. This week's big time grind, again, just something that just try to tweak Ben's mind and kind of talk through which direction we're really leaning right about now. And right now it's the tale of two just hot situations. Which one are we more excited about? And what we've talked about most of the day is Tennessee basketball possibly making a deep March Madness run. Again, consistency is going to be the dictator of that reality. But ultimately, in the D1 baseball most recent rankings, preseason rankings, your number 2 baseballs will be hitting the diamond here in the month of February. Are you more excited about the future of Tennessee basketball, the depth that is Rick Barnes' Bruisers right now, or is it Tony V and the bunch, the home run kings?
I don't want people to think that I don't have confidence in our basketball team. That's not the case. When I look at this grind, this week's grind, I'm looking at what I'm excited about in the upcoming weeks, and what I'm really excited about is our baseball balls. We've got a lot of big transfers coming in that are filling in gaps. You've got that Maui Auna guy from Kansas coming in to fill in the shortstop opening we have. I think Blake Burke's going to have a big season, our big first baseman. Jarrell Ortega back, Jared Dickey. I've got a really – and we're going to play Arkansas this season at Arkansas. How exciting and how much are we looking forward to that game in that stadium? So I've got a lot of anticipation for the baseball balls. My concerns about the basketball team are strictly tied to what we saw in the first half of the Mississippi State game and the second half of the Mississippi State game. This seems somewhat of a repeat of last season. If we are unable to shoot the ball well from three-point land, we're not going to be successful in the tournament. If that's the game plan going in the tournament, we've seen it with Auburn and Bruce Pearl's teams, you're going to have a night where you're going to go cold, and you better have them big men score some points. And right now, I'm not seeing it. I've seen some glimpses with, like you said, with our boy Euros, and we've seen Kemwa have some big points, but we need to see some more consistency, and I'm just not seeing it right now. I have all the confidence in our basketball team, but I'm excited about those baseball balls.
I'm gonna say the here and now is Tennessee basketball, and I'm a sucker for a heartbreak. So I'm gonna roll with the basketball team. I just think we talk about the Serbian killer, we talk about Uros Plavsic, we talk about Vescovi, we talk about Kumwa, we talk about Triple J. If all of them play great. Zakai Ziegler, we talk about all these kids, and if Phillips can be a one and doneer that we think he is, I think it's about putting the pieces together to find that perfect switch to flip there in March. And so I think it's out there to be had. Again, Rick Barnes last year kind of got a monkey off his back, got a conference championship in the tournament. So I think there's a piece. All the members of this team, barring Phillips and Key, were on that team that kind of ground out that time in Tampa. So to me, I think we may have to take our lumps here in the regular season, try those different lineups that we talked about that weren't necessarily as successful. And then come March, if we need 6 good minutes with that lineup out there, we can grind it out and beat some people up. So I like this basketball team. Like I said, I'm a sucker for a heartbreak, so I'm going to ride with them till I can't. But that doesn't take anything away from Tony V and the boys. I'm excited for what the Diamond's going to look like. And really, I think unlike previous years for Tony V, he doesn't have to climb to that top ranking. I mean, a couple series in and one slip up by number one. I think LSU's ranked number one right now, and Tennessee could be number one in the country early in this season.
Okay, now time for the alternate ending.
Yeah, no. Let's do that. And if you don't know that, you need to watch Wayne's World. Turn this podcast off and watch Wayne's World right now. But Ben, it's been a good show. Again, Chris Lofton's jersey retired. Again, recapped a little bit of the college football playoff championship, closed out 2022 there, and then look ahead. Drop the game to Kentucky, but rebound and grind out the win in Stark Vegas. Tennessee basketball is one of those things that you got to live on every game and enjoy what you got. But until next time, I like that. We're going to fist bump and move it to next week. But until then, guys, be safe, take care. And that's right. Grind on.